Hi guys, I just wanted to tell you a little bit of a story tonight. Now, as we get started, you're going to hear the title of the story, and I know you're going to think, oh, I know that story. I've heard that before. But I want to tell you that I kind of do that sometimes when I hear about stories too. The thing about me that I wanted to share with you is that I actually grew up as a pastor's kid, which means that my dad was a pastor. And so I grew up going to church since I can remember. And I liked it most of the time. It wasn't too bad for me. One of the things though that I've learned growing up is that when I hear of a Bible story, sometimes I think, "Oh, I know that story. I don't need to hear it," or "Oh, I know that Bible verse. It doesn't have any new meaning to me." But I challenge myself even this time when I was reading through the story before sharing it with you tonight. I realized that there's some things in here that I didn't realize, and some things that stand out that are new to me this time. So I just wanted to start with that of challenging you that even though you think you may have heard this story before, and maybe some of you haven't, but I want to challenge you to listen for some new things that you hear about God or something about yourself as we talk about this story, which is going to be Daniel and the lion's den. And I'm going to share a little bit about some of the new things that stood out to me. But first, I want to tell you about Daniel. And Daniel was an amazing leader, and he grew quickly to be over a lot of areas. And so King Darius is the king that was there at the time, and Daniel was part of his team. There's 120 satraps, which are kind of like people who rule over different areas because there's one king for the whole kingdom and he can't rule over everything. And so Daniel is part of that kingdom and he's ruling over part of it. But King Darius likes him so much and he's such an exceptional leader that he distinguishes himself. In fact, we're in the book of Daniel in the Old Testament, and in chapter 6, verse 3, it says, "Now Daniel so distinguished himself among the administrators and the satraps by his exceptional qualities that the king planned to set him above the whole kingdom." Now, that's pretty amazing. Daniel is an awesome guy. He's following God. He's a good guy. He has good morals. He's leading the country well. And so the king says, "Oh, I really love you, Daniel. You're awesome." But this problem of these other 120 satraps, and there's some of them, this group, that kind of get a little jealous, right? Like, so they see Daniel over there and they're like, "Oh man, he's doing so awesome. I wish I was as cool as him." And I don't know if that's ever happened to you, but it's happened to me where I see somebody else doing great and I get a little sad and I go, "Man, I think that's not cool. He's doing so great and I feel kind of bad." So I understand where they're coming from. However, then they decide, well, Daniel's so awesome that we can't really force him to do something bad. So we're going to have to come up with a plan to get rid of him. And it's going to have to be something to do with his God because he loves his God so much. So this little group of people, they decide they're going to go to King Darius. And they decide to say this, all right? They say, "Oh, King Darius, live forever," right? They're kind of flattering him, trying to get their way. "The royal administrators, prefects, satraps, and advisors and governors have all agreed that the king should issue an edict and enforce the decree that anyone who prays to any god or man during the next 30 days, except to you, O king, shall be thrown into the lion's den. Now, O king, issue the decree and put it in writing so that it cannot be altered, in accordance with the laws of the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be repealed." So King Darius put the decree in writing. So basically, King Darius has said, nobody for the next 30 days can pray to anyone except me. So he's saying, I'm pretty awesome. No man is better than me. No God is better than me. Everybody should pray to me. But here's Daniel, one of his leaders, and Daniel loves God, the one true God, and Daniel follows the one true God. And Daniel learns that King Darius made this rule, and the very next thing that Daniel does, it says, is that he went home to his upstairs room where the windows opened towards Jerusalem, and 3 times a day he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God, just as he had done before. What? He knows this law has been put into practice, into place, and he still goes home and prays? It's amazing to me in this story how Daniel, he does something that's uncomfortable, right? He knows that this is going to get him in trouble. He knows that it's uncomfortable and it's, wrong in the eyes of the king. And still, I mean, even he's going to be thrown in the lion's den. He's going to die. And he knows still that he loves his God so much and that it's so important to be connected to God that he still goes and prays. That to me is amazing. So then these men they caught Daniel, right? They say, "Oh, we saw you praying." And they went to the king and they said, "Did you not publish this decree, right? Like, didn't you say that this was a rule? O king, that anyone who prays to anyone else is going to be thrown into the lion's den?" And the king answered, "Yes, yeah, that's what I said. Of course, that's the decree. It stands." Then they told the king that Daniel was praying. And this is what the king says. In verse 14 it says, "When the king heard this, he was greatly distressed. He was determined to rescue Daniel and made every effort until sundown to save him." This king, King Darius, he loved Daniel so much. He knew that Daniel was such an awesome guy, such an exceptional, distinguished leader, that he, just in the way he acted, that he did not want Daniel to die. He did not want Daniel to be off his team. And so he is really, really sad about Daniel. Now, the king, we kind of see that the king doesn't really care about God, right? God, he was saying, "No God, no man, nobody can pray to them, only to me." So I see how Darius kind of has this heart of, he's not focused on God, he's focused on Daniel and his love for Daniel and how great of a leader Daniel is. And so that's really why he's distressed. But then the men came and said, "No, you cannot change this rule." So in verse 16, the king gave the order, and they brought Daniel, and they threw him into the lion's den. And that this kind of surprised me. The king said to Daniel, "May your God, whom you serve continually, rescue you." So the king is saying, yeah, I acknowledge that your God, that you pray to him, that you believe in him. I acknowledge that. So, we kind of know the next part of the story, right? The lion's den is closed up, and then, it's nighttime. So the king actually goes home. He doesn't eat. He doesn't sleep. He doesn't have any entertainment. He's just all alone in his room, and he's really, really sad because he thinks Daniel's going to be dead. But then he comes back the next morning. First light of the morning, it says, the king got up and hurried to the lion's den. When he came near the den, he called to Daniel in an anguished voice. He's so scared. He says, "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve, continually been able to rescue you from the lions?" Now, what's amazing is that King Darius calls him the living God here. So he's very hopeful. He's saying, "Oh, I really hope that your God is real. I am longing for your God to be real." I don't know if that's ever happened to you, but there's times where I long to experience God in those ways, to know that God is alive and working for me. And I love what happens here because Daniel answers from the lion's den. He says, "O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and he shut the mouths of the lions. They didn't even hurt me because I was found innocent in his sight, nor have I done any wrong before you, O king." So Daniel's excited because he's like, "I didn't do anything wrong with God. I didn't do anything wrong with you, king, and I'm alive. God saved me." I'm so excited. And guess what? The king was super happy. He was overjoyed, and he gave orders to get Daniel out of the den. Then the men who falsely accused Daniel get in really big trouble. In fact, they and their whole families are thrown into the lion's den, and it's pretty crazy here in the Bible. You know how they were against Daniel, and they got thrown into the lion's den, and they died. So then King Darius actually makes a decree, and this is where I love this story. This new time that I read it now, and I love it for this because I see how King Darius had a heart against God. Right? He had a heart for himself. He wanted people to pray to him, but he knew Daniel and he loved Daniel, and I don't know. I want to be a person in my life, and I hope this is true for you too. I want to be a person that loves God so much, that points my life so much to God, that prays to God, that is so connected to God, that God's glory is shown in me, that I am a good person because of what God's doing in my life. I want people to look at my life and go, wow, not, oh, Miss Sarah's so awesome, she's so cool, but instead, oh, God is doing such great things in her life, and I want my life to point towards God, just like Daniel's does here. Because then what happens is that King Darius says, I issue a decree that in every part of my kingdom, people must fear and reverence the God of Daniel, for he is the living God, and he endures forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed. His dominion will never end. He rescues and saves. He performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on the earth. He rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. He's saying, this God is crazy. This God is so amazing, so powerful. He closed the mouth of lions and saved Daniel. And that to me is amazing. Not that, yeah, I mean, it was amazing and great. And I love that God saves and rescues Daniel. There's been times in my life where I'm excited that God has saved me and shown up for me. And I hope that's been true for you too. And, through this story. But I also love in this story how King Darius, his heart is changed, right? He once followed himself. He once followed just Daniel. He loved Daniel as the man he was. And then his heart is changed because of Daniel's life to love God and to proclaim and worship and glorify God. And that's what I want my life to be. I want to be somebody who has this amazing life because of God. And then people look at what God is doing in my life and say, wow, God is the living God. He rescues, he saves. Like, let's glorify and worship him. And so I challenge you to just maybe you resonate with the other leaders who were trying to get Daniel in trouble. And maybe, ask the Lord to kind of help you get over that about that person that you're jealous of. Or maybe you resonate with King Darius and there's people that you love, that you're looking at somebody else's life and how God's working in their life. And so let that point you to God. Or maybe you're Daniel and maybe God's doing awesome stuff in your life, or maybe you need to be close to God and let him do stuff in your life so that other people can see your life and then they can turn their eyes to God because of how you're living and because of the things that God is doing in your life. So I hope that you get something new out of that story today, a familiar story, but I'm always amazed at how we can read God's word every time and hear new things from him. Have a good day, guys. See you soon.